first of all, I think we got an excellent basketball program going in that last year we were the only team in Alabama to go to the NC2A, and when we played Louisville in the Midwest Regionals, there were only 16 teams left to play for the national championship. We had 4 sophomores and a freshman that started that game, and this coming year, which we're into, we started off the season with Louisville. We got beat by 2, and at Louisville goes into Tennessee after they knock off St. John's, Oral Roberts, and Michigan State, the national champion. Louisville beats Tennessee at Tennessee by 2, so I think it tells the strength of our ball club. Unfortunately, we lost the Sun Belt Conference Player of the Year in Rory White, who's from Tuskegee, up in this area. We lost him probably for the season. We're not the same basketball team because of it. We're still 3-1 and haven't been really beaten except for the Louisville game without him, but we miss him. And I think we had the best basketball team in the state, and still they've got to beat us before I see anything different.
Would you play Alabama and Auburn if you had the chance?
Well, I think so, but I understand, first of all, I think C.M. Newton and Sonny Smith are 2 of the finest basketball coaches to coach the game. If I were in their situation, I would probably look twice at playing us too. I would like to play. I think it's going to take an act of legislature to do it, and I don't see that right now coming. But we'd like to play, but that's not the most important thing to us right now. The most important thing is winning the Sun Belt Conference, because that gets us in the NC2A tournament.
The governor was the speaker at a luncheon for the 37th annual meeting of Soil and Water Conservation District Supervisors. The governor took the opportunity to get a plug-in for the state's new duck stamp, saying the money raised by selling the stamps will help provide a wildlife heritage for future generations. James says the state's most precious natural resource is its children. He stressed the value of a solid foundation in education. The governor talked of the American dream of getting a good job, raising a family, and buying a home. He says because of economic conditions today, buying that home is almost impossible.
What has caused this condition, which is oppressive, which says your dollar is no longer what it used to be and it's fading further, is government policy in America for the last 2 to 3 decades that has tried to be all things to all people at any cost. We do not need to conserve that anymore. We need to get away with it and conserve a way of life.
The governor said he entered government fearing it. He says history shows that we should fear government. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
John and Dorothy Danley of 6311 Pinebrook Drive face a total of 6 charges of child molestation. 2 warrants were issued on advice from the district attorney, and 4 indictments already handed down by the Montgomery County grand jury.
These charges stem from sexual misconduct they have had with their 12-year-old daughter, as well as 2 other females ages 14 and 15 years of age. The sexual misconduct has spanned a period of 6 years that we know of.
The Danleys' children are temporary wards of the state. Less than 2 weeks ago, sheriff's officers and state drug enforcement agents searching for illegal drugs confiscated material leading to the molestation charges. Corporal Bailey adds the investigation is continuing and further indictments could be handed down in the near future. Paul Roth, WSFA TV News. Dorothy and John Danley of 6311 Pinebrook Drive are charged with 6 counts of child molestation. The juveniles involved include the Danleys' 12-year-old daughter and 2 other young girls, ages 14 and 15.
At the present time, both children of the Danleys are in a temporary custody of the Department of Pension and Security. And investigation is being made pertaining to the other children, with the possibility of them being removed from their homes and placed in temporary custody of the Department of Pension and Security.
Evidence of the molestation and sexual misconduct was gathered during a search for narcotics and a subsequent investigation. Corporal Bailey says the continuing investigation could produce other indictments against the couple and other adults. Paul Roth, WSFA TV News.
What's the smoke?
Well,
Wood burn.
it's operating continuously anywhere in the world.
University officials have two main complaints about the report to the governor on higher education funding. First, they say the state's colleges and universities should have been given an opportunity to come to Montgomery and discuss any findings before such information was leaked to the news media. Second, they say there was never a request made to Montevallo from the Finance Department to make a change in its accounting procedures. David Bronner, the governor's financial advisor, has criticized 7 schools for non-standard accounting procedures. Montevallo President Jim Vickery says the accounting procedures they use now are viewed by the Department of Examiners of Public Accounts as acceptable. State Senator Lister Hill Proctor and Representative Curtis Smith represent Montevallo in the legislature, and they say they can find no problem with the operations of the school. Senator Proctor went further to say leaking the report to the Associated Press is, quote, an intentional act to plant in the minds of the legislature and the people the idea that colleges don't need money, end quote. He asked the governor's office for an apology. Vickery says he's been told by Dr. Bronner personally that the University of Montevallo has done nothing wrong, but publicly Vickery says no such statements have been issued.
University officials would not speculate as to why the administration is chosen to, as they put it, go after their credibility. But as President Jim Vickery said, there's going to be some madness in Montgomery. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News at the University of Montevallo.
Many tornado victims had insurance to cover the damage to their homes and property. But for those who didn't, or whose insurance covers only part of the loss, the federal government's disaster loan program helps. Through the Small Business Administration, homeowners can apply for loans with a 3% interest rates. Business loans carry a 5% rate. Only victims in Montgomery and bordering counties are eligible. To make it easier for victims to apply for aid, Small Business Administration loan specialists are in Montgomery through Wednesday. They're taking applications and answering questions in the Civil Defense Office at Montgomery City Hall. After Wednesday, victims must get their applications from the SBA office in Birmingham. Applications must be in by February 4th. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
The Alba Division of the Coffee County Grand Jury has returned a very short 2-paragraph report in which it says it returned one indictment involving 7 defendants.
We have since learned that a number of the county commission members have been served with warrants for their arrest. The indictments came after the grand jury met for several hours today. That grand jury earlier blasted conditions at the county jail in Alba and threatened legal action if improvements weren't made. During the past 8 months, there have been a lot of improvements at the jail, but in the September 4th report, the grand jury expressed concern about meeting federal prison standards. That's when the threats of indictments were made. The commission is already under a circuit court order to build a new jail in Enterprise. With the commission facing mandates to build new facilities in Enterprise and Alba, the commissioners had expressed hope that their efforts in Enterprise would satisfy Alba grand jurors. A preliminary report from a National Institute on Crime showing the commissioners' efforts to comply was released yesterday. The commissioners now have to sign a $500 appearance bond to reappear in court December 21st. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News, Alba.
Gilmore's biggest complaint is that the authority doesn't give tenants a chance to have their say at housing authority meetings. He says board members are too busy talking about evicting someone. The newly elected city councilman says the housing board's makeup should include a tenant. He also says it's sad that residents have to wait 3 and 4 days to have repairs made, and he says the housing authority board should pay whatever is necessary to hire enough maintenance workers to get the job done properly. Authority workers have been on strike since last spring. None of the authority board members responded to Gilmore's charges. They did discuss other housing problems, such as how many months the authority should accept late rent payments before evicting tenants. And Frank Parquette will head a committee to decide what to do about vandalism at Young Fort Village. Parquette says something must be wrong with the system if vandals cannot be caught. One woman in the audience suggested that hiring a security guard would be cheaper in the long run than repeatedly spending money on repairs. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Back in September, the Elba Division of the Coffee County Grand Jury released a report critical of the county jail in Elba and threatened to indict the county commission members if improvements weren't made. Those indictments were handed down today. The grand jury report was very brief and didn't explain what the charges were against the commissioners. There have been numerous improvements to the jail in Elba during the last 8 to 10 months, but the grand jury apparently was concerned with meeting federal prison standards. County commission members were under subpoena to be present during the grand jury session, but were let go before the report was issued. The commissioners are already under a circuit court order to build a new jail in Enterprise. A preliminary report from a National Institute on Crime released yesterday showed that the commissioners have made efforts toward complying with that circuit court order. The commissioners say they had hoped the Elba grand jury wouldn't indict them because of their efforts in Enterprise to build a new jail capable of holding all of the county's prison population. The indicted commissioners have to sign a $500 appearance bond to show up in court December 21st. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News in Elba.
A young lady who works here at the drugstore was working when her husband came in and attempted to make her leave with him against her will. He apparently forced her to the door with a knife to her throat and then on out into the parking lot. After they got into the parking lot, the employer of the young lady came out of the store with a pistol and apparently shot the man once in the shoulder.
Our sources say police have at least 200 photos showing numerous sexual acts. Investigators are said by our sources to be trying to identify other adults in photos with the Danleys' 12-year-old daughter and 15-year-old son. Assistant Montgomery County District Attorney Jimmy Poole is in charge of the investigation.
There are some Polaroid photographs involved, and there are some photographs of some people that are yet unidentified. And where in the community those people reside, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they reside out near Pine Brook or in another section of the community where these people lived before, but we're certainly going to look into that.
Montgomery attorney Walter Chandler is the lawyer for the Danleys.
I have been apprised that the state has, or at least allegedly has, some photographs. Now, how many there are and what they're of, I'm not prepared to go into at this time and wouldn't discuss it. That's something that we'll find out, and we'll find out what the state has and what evidence they do in fact have at a later date.
Have you discussed pleadings with the Danleys?
No.
The Danleys have resigned from their jobs with the state. She worked for the Revenue Department and he worked for the Finance Department as a ground supervisor. They both remain in the Montgomery County Jail under $50,000 bond. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News at the Montgomery County Courthouse.
39. May I check on traffic? 10-4.
Only the small orange and white sign will give away the identity of a Radio Emergency Associated Citizens Team's member. For the past 4 years, the local REACT team members have volunteered their time and use of their own vehicles to assist the Montgomery Police Department during the hectic holiday season.
We'll be working directly with the police department. We'll be assisting the motorists out on the bypasses, should they run out of gas, have an accident, mechanical breakdowns, directions, and this type of service to the public, which I think is a great benefit to them.
Monitoring the official CB Emergency Channel 9, REACT members will patrol some of Montgomery's busiest roadways, like the southern and eastern bypasses and Atlanta Highway. They'll be in direct communication at all times with the police department's command post on the eastern bypass, just in case they're needed. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News.
Congress is currently cleaning up the Justice System Improvement Act in a conference committee. Bo Davis, executive director of the Alabama Law Enforcement Planning Agency, told his Board of Supervisors the new act will mean a lot to Alabama. Aside from the relief from paperwork, Davis says the new act will eliminate the requirement that states provide 5% of matching funds. In addition, assumption of program cost by states can be avoided if the state can show a hardship, such as a low tax base. Davis also discussed the upcoming budget. Nationally, the Law Enforcement Assistance Administration has a budget of $486 million, down from $541 million last year. Alabama's share of the money this year is just over $4 million, plus additional money for planning and juvenile programs, for a total of $5.6 million. Davis says his agency still plans to ask the legislature for $750,000. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
Are there any aspects of the European system of justice that you think might be incorporated into the system of justice here in this country?
Well, I think I've said this, that they do some things better than we do, and I think we do some things better than the European system of justice accomplishes. One thing that is very unusual is that when there is a case before a Supreme Court, here we have the court and we have the judges belonging to the court, and then the parties argue the case. And it's an adversary system totally. In Europe and in the European Court of Justice, there's a third ingredient, and that is an advocate general who sits and hears the case, and after it's over with, that person, who is a very high standing in legal affairs, makes a recommendation to the court as to what its decision should be. And the Supreme Courts of Germany and Belgium and Luxembourg pay a great deal of attention to that third party. We don't have that in our system. It might be helpful.
The Association of Black College Alumni voiced its opposition to a metropolitan university system. Montgomery attorney Vanzetta Penn Durant spoke for the group. She says the metro system would not be fair to the schools or their students, and any duplication of curriculum is not by the black schools.
It goes without saying that the creation of schools of education in the essentially white universities in Huntsville and Montgomery, the creation of schools of arts and sciences, the creation of athletic teams, the creation of counseling services, the creation and the equipping of a library, the building of a campus is itself a duplication.
The recommendation made at today's news conference is identical to those made yesterday at the Alabama State University Board of Trustees meeting, that AUM and Troy State of Montgomery be absolved into Alabama State University. Michael Jones, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
We're going to have to stop the inside game of the Tennessee Volunteers. They have a great inside ball game. They have a very balanced attack, and we're going to have to be patient enough against their defense that I consider to be one of the best in the Southeastern Conference, and get good shots and get on the backboard with them if we're going to have a chance to play well.
Coach, you're concerned about your team. How has practice been this week?
Well, we're having a problem right now stopping people on with the good post players, and of course Tennessee has that here tonight. We spent a great deal of time on that. Defense is a team game as well as offense, and we've got to get our total team involved in stopping these great post people that we have to go up against. And tonight surely is one of those, and that's been our major emphasis this week, and we hope that we can take care of that a little bit better.
On November 14th, a domestic dispute brought police officers to 201 South Boulevard. They separated a fighting couple, and then Officer Frank Mitchell says the woman loved May Loss and charged him with a knife. Acting in what he calls self-defense, Mitchell shot her in the face. Mayor Emery Falmer requested an investigation, and the grand jury decided Officer Mitchell acted professionally and in the line of duty. District 6 Councilman Donald Watkins and 3 other councilmen said the investigation wasn't thorough enough, and they announced they would conduct their own unofficial probe. At first, Watkins says police and city officials cooperated with him. Now he says that cooperation has run dry. The mayor has refused a request for a copy of Officer Mitchell's personnel file. Mayor Falmer says as far as he's concerned, the case is closed, and he says if Watkins' self-appointed committee wants information, it'll have to go to court to get it. Watkins says he just might do that. Watkins' group is looking at more than just one charge of police brutality. It's examining several reports. He says such charges should be investigated by a police review board, but several times the council has turned down resolutions to create one. Watkins admits that even though his group has no authority, it is acting as a police review board. He says if Officer Mitchell's case goes to court, it will be some time before his group completes its study and releases its findings. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News at Montgomery City Hall.
The upcoming budget process is very important to the Fob James administration for 2 reasons. First, this is James' first budget, and no doubt he wants to do a good job. Second, the economy is, as some experts have put it, distorted. Dealing with an unstable economy and inflation is enough to keep even the most seasoned budget maker busy. Education, and particularly higher education, is an area the administration apparently feels strongly about, especially when it comes to money. Finance Director John Papanastis and Financial Advisor David Bronner both say that the executive branch must know what resources higher education has before the governor can make intelligent budget recommendations to the legislature. Papanastis says the executive and legislative budget hearings will serve as a forum for the administration to extract information from colleges and universities that has not been asked for in the past. The bottom line is full financial disclosure to the governor, not necessarily for the pursuit of criminal charges, but rather to place the budget process in a posture so that the state's money can be spent wisely. A high administration official says they don't expect it to be an easy task. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
More and more it appears that hospital emergency rooms are being used not only for life and death situations, but for treatment of non-emergency cases. The problem is that more and more people are using the emergency room for treatment of trivial illnesses and routine problems, and often because they do not have regular doctors. What most don't realize is that emergency room fees often are higher than doctors due to the equipment that's required, and visits are not always covered by insurance. In addition, there's usually a long wait because legitimate incoming emergencies will be handled first. Also, the evaluation of an extensive problem is not well handled in an emergency room, and the physician does not attempt a complete examination. Emergency rooms also make no provision for continued care. Many times, problems that are brought to the emergency room are problems that could be taken care of at home or in a doctor's office. So next time you start for the hospital, ask yourself if it's a real emergency, or if you could be taken care of by a doctor or by being seen on a regular admission basis. Ivy Berman, WSFA TV News.
Looking down on the port city of Mobile, it's hard to realize a hurricane had come very close to obliterating it just 3 months ago. The streets are bustling with cars, and the downtown area is filled with shoppers.
The explanation is that business is booming in Mobile. Never before have we had so many roof jobs being done at one time. That means added supplies are sold and so forth and so on.
While repair and renovation dollars are rolling into the city, the local government is getting its share, and revenues are looking good. Greenhouse says the city has excellent insurance coverage for its losses, and there's also federal aid. But all good things must come to an end, and when repairs slow down, so will revenue income. But Greenhouse says city officials have considered this.
Well, obviously in the short run they are beneficial. That may be misleading because it may give you a cliff effect with a dramatic downturn. But as of right now, we don't see any long-range negative impact.
Just because money is good doesn't mean the city is back to normal. Everywhere you look, there are reminders of September 12th, reminders of how awesome the damage was. The timber industry was devastated. Multi-million-dollar losses in Baldwin, Mobile, Washington, and other counties total at least $333 million in overall timber loss. This could represent a Gulf area timber crop for the next several years. This in a state where the timber cut each year is valued at $225 million. Work at Mobile's international dock system is just now returning to normal operation after the repair of over $40 million worth of damage. Docks officials say Frederick's scars will be felt for generations. Those few hundred people who live on Dauphin Island are still without a permanent bridge. The ferry Mount Marcy, contracted by the state to transport people to and from the island, sits idle, waiting for a channel of waterways to the island to be dredged. In the meantime, people are being hauled in military landing crafts. Officials say the Dauphin Island homeowners are being patient, though. The view is totally different now than it was 3 months ago, and so is the outlook for the small businessmen, like shrimpers, who suffered millions in dollars of losses to their fleets. Hurricane Frederick left an impression on just about every resident down here.
In a couple of more weeks, it'll be Christmas and an opportunity for a lot of the people of this city to get over Hurricane Frederick and start fresh. But there are many psychologists who are afraid that there'll be a larger than normal number of people who will go through the Christmas season very sad. They're the people who are prone to depression anyway, usually because they're alone. But now they'll have the added ravages of Hurricane Frederick. The damages still must be repaired, the bills keep coming in, and the losses are still being felt. But for the most part, it'll be an opportunity for a majority of the people of this city to start fresh with Christmas.
Most of the heavy work has been done, and people can relax a little and enjoy a Sunday afternoon rugby game. Banville Park is seeing more people enjoy the shade, play with the squirrels, and notice that they too are eating a little better these days. In Gulf Shores, however, the story is a little different. Some of the worst damage occurred here. This is a scene of Gulf Shores immediately after Hurricane Frederick. Now the same street 3 months later. Little has changed. Sand still covers most yards.
While the people of Gulf Shores have had 3 months to recuperate since Hurricane Frederick slammed into the area, many of the people are just now finding the time and the money to dig out of the sand and try and rebuild their homes.
Gulf Shores represents one of the largest losses to the state's tourism industry. Tourism is also important to Mobile. The battleship USS Alabama has just reopened for business.
About tourism in the city, how does its forecast look?
Well, it's really impossible for us to assess it at this point. This is not our peak season, and of course Bellingraph Gardens is out of commission, and no one really knows what the forecast is there.
The city of Mobile has almost completely bounced back from the effects of Hurricane Frederick, but while the short-term effects are good, the long-term effects have many more problems that Mayor Greenaw says the city will face as they come up. In Mobile, Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
True of many other state institutions. Let me repeat, the use of tests in admission and the need for financial aid as barriers to higher education access for blacks. The area of greatest distress for blacks seeking access.
The commission heard opinions on several issues, but the Metro University proposal for Huntsville and Montgomery sparked by far the most reaction. The commission staff has suggested Alabama State University and Auburn University in Montgomery be combined with their own boards of trustees under another Metro board. Representatives of Alabama State as well as Auburn University in Montgomery took exception to the idea. The main opposition voiced was the desire by both schools to maintain their separate identities. It was the feeling by many who spoke on behalf of ASU that their school would find itself the servant of AUM. Several persons said the recommendation should be abandoned, and in its place, ASU should be allowed to completely take over AUM as well as Troy State University at Montgomery. The plan has yet to gain approval by the commission, however, that could happen in January. If the commission approves the plan or a modification of it, then the legislature could find itself in the position of debating the entire affair on the floor. After that, the federal government might have something to say. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
Established in Montgomery, thereby creating a...
It meant a lot to me, in particular, such a short time. You know, this is a milestone, I guess, a lot of coaches that start out in the coaching ranks on the college level takes a long time to reach. By reaching in just a little bit short of, a little bit more than 4 seasons in coaching college basketball as a head coach, it meant an awful lot. And coming against our arch rival, a team like Tuskegee, who has a good ball club, it was a little bit extra, had a little bit extra meaning for me. All I'm doing out there on the floor is trying to get the guys to realize, you know, that maybe they're not doing the things they need to do fundamentally, you know, to take care of a situation, to remind them what situation that they're in, you know, just basic coaching points. I kind of basically let them play, you know. We're constantly trying to correct the mistakes that they're making. Basically, that's all we're doing, because I think that's where your job actually lies in terms of coaching. We're not getting rid of getting in the movement and motion with the basketball on offense. You got to stop handling it so much. We're not making them play defense. You got to pass the ball and cut through. Pass it and cut. Having an undefeated season in basketball is awful tough because, you know, the way this game goes, anybody can beat you on any given night. So, you know, not reaching our first goal, if we don't happen to do that, then we're shooting for the national championship, and I don't think it's out of our reach.
Garrett Coliseum usually houses such exhibitions as state fairs or horse shows, but tonight the Coliseum will be rocking to basketball, Alabama State versus Tuskegee. It's been a long time since major college basketball has been played in the Coliseum. However, during the 50s, Alabama and Auburn annually played to sellout crowds. But it's been 20 years since round ball was played in the Coliseum, and the absence has left some problems. Coach James Oliver says his team worked out here at the Coliseum yesterday. He reports the basketball court is rather bumpy, but that's not the major problem. He says they measured the eastern backboard, and it measured 10 feet 3 inches instead of the usual 10 feet. However, Coliseum officials say that problem has been corrected. But there is another interesting aspect to tonight's ballgame, the fans. Coach, Tuskegee is such a great rivalry with Alabama State, but last time the two teams played, it got a little too intense.
Well, Fred, that's true. I wasn't here at the time, and I don't think the present coach at Tuskegee was here. Most of those players have gone on, and I understand that they had a free fall. And, you know, when you get rivals and you get intense and they're really close together as they would be here in Dunn Arena or at Tuskegee, you know, anything can happen. You know, you can get the rubbing shoulders and the tension can break out. But playing at Garrett Coliseum, I think, is going to help that part of it. And rivals are good, now, as long as they're good rivals. But I don't, you know, particularly care for, you know, people getting so emotional, you know, where win or lose it will cause a ruckus.
There is one more aspect to tonight's ball game that is noteworthy. Coach James Oliver has 99 victories as a college coach. If he should beat Tuskegee tonight, it would mark victory number 100. It should be an interesting night of basketball in Garrett Coliseum. Fred Albers, WSFA TV Sports.
After nearly 2 years of planning and renovation, officials of Enterprise today dedicated their new Civic Center. The facility is a cumulative and economic effort of the city officials. They bought an old National Guard armory, applied for state and federal grants, got a lot of work done under the Emergency Employment Act, and built a facility big enough to handle the city's 55 civic organizations' needs for the next several decades. The total cost of the project, including property, comes to $270,000, much lower than the projections. City Administrator Carl Griffin, who headed the project, was honored with the Meritorious Achievement Award. Although the facility still lacks a gymnasium or professional stage lighting, city officials say it's only a matter of time. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News and Enterprise. Earlier this week, the 6 Coffee County Commissioners and their chairman, probate Judge James Sawyer, were indicted, apparently for violating a state code calling for the upkeep of a jail facility that meets certain standards. But Coffee County Attorney Warren Rose says the commission has spent over $9,000 in recent months to repair recommendations made on them by the Elba Division of the county's grand jury.
Coffee County operates under a dual courthouse situation with the county seat in the centrally located city of Elba. And there's this annex behind me in the county's population center of Enterprise. For decades, people of the county have had a growing concern about the duplication of records and personnel and the upkeep to the 2 courthouses. And this has caused a stalemate in finding a solution to the problem. Rowe thinks that this intra-city friction has found its way into the indictments handed down by the Elba Division of the county grand jury.
First of all, let me say I don't understand this indictment. I don't understand it, and I don't agree with it. And the only motivation I can see for it would be political in nature.
Because the 2
cities can't decide who's going to
Well,
be.
that and there's a petition circulating over here in Enterprise to move the county seat and jailhouse and courthouse and county buildings to one site, which is Enterprise.
There are other problems with the indictment, among which are methods for the commissioners to exonerate themselves, whether the statute carries any provisions for penalties, and what those penalties might be. Those arguments will be made in district court. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
The commission met to discuss its budget recommendations to the governor and legislature. Dr. Funderburg says it's obvious that revenue must be found for his school, and fundraising is a big part of that. He says they're currently in a campaign to raise money, but since the proposal to combine the administrations of AUM and ASU has been aired, their contributions are in jeopardy.
We are already feeling the effects of Dr. Porter's plan. I think it's safe to tell you at this time that it probably will cost us, at least during the coming months, several $100,000. I hope that we'll be able to recover that somewhere down the line.
The commission approved a budget recommendation for AUM of over $8.6 million. Auburn University came out a little better than the staff recommendations. Auburn President Harry Philpott asked for and received an additional $565,000 for the nursing program and extension service. Auburn's total AIC recommendation, over $66 million. University of Montevallo President Jim Vickery repeated his request for an apology from the governor's office for comments attributed to the governor's staff about the finances of some colleges. Vickery had no comments on his budget, and the commission approved the staff recommendation of $7.2 million. The commission's recommendations will be reviewed by the governor's office for inclusion in the 1980-81 executive budget. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
It was neither approved or disapproved.
As of yesterday, the local post office had processed only about 160 Christmas cards to the hostages in Iran. The director of the Family Mart supermarket wants to change that, so his store is giving away Christmas cards and helping people send them for the regular postage price of 31 cents. The post office is helping out by providing a postage meter so the cards can be stamped and sorted right in the store. The Christmas card booth is already busy. After only 1 hour, 30 people had sent cards.
I don't know whether they'll get them or not, but I think them knowing that we're sending them will be some moral support anyway.
If you want to send your own card, mail it to U.S. Hostages, American Embassy, P.O. Box 50, Tehran, Iran. Jarvis says his store has taken on the project because many Americans feel strongly about the Iran situation, and this is one way they can help. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
I don't know. Well, you see, the whole thing about catching, I'm not trying to catch Paul, because if I catch him, he's got to lose. Now, you know, I told the Touchdown Club over at, I think it was at Birmingham, that I'm not trying to catch him. Just let us go on and keep winning, and eventually one of us gonna get out or the other. So. But for me to catch him, it would mean he'd have to lose. So we don't want to do it like that. We enjoy letting the young coaches chase us.
Do you know Doug Williams was as talented as he was when he went down to Tampa?
Certainly did. That's why he came to Grambling. We got all the Williams. The Williams played quarterback for us this year. Doug's brother played baseball for us. They all could play baseball. I really feel Doug was so gifted that he could have been a varsity basketball player. He could throw the baseball so hard it looked like an aspirin, so he was just an all-around athlete with a great arm.
Have you watched his performance in recent weeks? It seemed like the Bucks and Doug have had some troubles.
Well, yes, you got to watch it and you got to talk to him. This is the time that they really need you, and he's having problems right now, and I think they're all having problems, and I just certainly hope they work out of it, because he's the type of guy that really feels he's responsible for the team. That's the way he was with Grambling. When the team would lose, he thought it was the call. It was his. He had done whatever was wrong, but it's a situation now where he wants to take the blame. I don't know whether he is to blame or not, but I just hope he has a good game this week.